Hey, I'm Nick Von Brack, and this is the Record Podcast. Coming to you live from this lovely, frigid Wednesday morning. I think it's a balmy 0 degrees outside, which is just awesome. For those of you who don't have to experience this weather, I tip my hat to you and tell you to enjoy it for those of us who are living in misery. Unfortunately, in this week's news, we've lost the great music legend, David Bowie. I shamefully admit I've never been into him that much, but in the past couple days I've been catching up, listening to some websites, best of lists and things like that, and I have been missing out. He's put out some really great stuff. Even aside from his hits, he's got some really interesting songs that change, not only tempo and mood and melody, but, the complete genre in the middle of a song. And I would advise any of you who haven't been listening to him over the years like me, I would definitely check his stuff out because I've been missing out for a long time, and he's really changed the scope for a lot of musicians that I love and for probably ones that you love too. So I would definitely check out his stuff. Use this as an excuse to get into him, and you can know more about him than just the Flight of the Conchords episode like yours truly. From David Bowie, I've been catching up on some old favorites of mine, like Dillinger Escape Plan, Coheed and Cambria. So check out any of those bands if you haven't heard them yet. And this week I'm talking to Ramon Mendoza. He is a former member of the band The Color Morale, and he is now currently a married family man. We talk about what it's like having a little kid in the house, running around, eating up all your time, but also trying to pursue musical endeavors, and his whole history with The Color Morale, how that formed, leaving the band, how tough that was, and our musical paths crossing throughout life. Good talk with a good buddy. Who I'm hoping our musical paths cross again soon. But coming up, I've got talks with John Alvin, the producer, Tyler Wildy of Epic Deli fame. If you're not hip to Epic Deli, look it up. It's awesome. I had a good talk with him. He's also been steeped in a lot of local bands that I was even unaware of. So it was a good chat and a lot of good stuff coming up. I've scheduled a bunch of stuff for this month and next month, and I will be hitting up Twitter a bunch to see if any of you have questions for the guests, so keep an eye on that. It's at The Record Podcast without the A. And yeah, I think that's it. So here's my talk with Ramon Mendoza. Stay warm, kiddies. Christmas with a newborn. Well, Christmas not with a newborn. How old's your boy?
He's 3,
3.
and he's going to be 4 in July. So yeah, he's growing. He's so huge. I don't know. There's nothing else. There's no other way to explain it.
What happens at 3.5? Is it just a whirlwind, or like what's like what stands out?
I don't know. Everyone's always terrible twos.
Yeah, yeah.
No, terrible twos. That's even. The threes are like he can full on talk for the most part. He has an attitude, and they pretty much say no to everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, it's awesome. He's a handful sometimes, but he's awesome. He's healthy, he's active, and
yeah. Well, that's the most important.
Yeah, exactly. I can't ask for anything else.
Good. So is that so not you're a family man? You've been married for I was at the wedding, so I'm trying to think how long it was.
No, trust me, I get mixed up too. It was 2013 we got married, so
okay.
What is that? It's 2006. All right, so it's 3 years now. Going to be going 4 years in October. So yeah, it's been a while, but we're doing great. The family's great, and
good.
Yeah, everything's growing except for the family. The family's not growing yet.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, now that you've got like a 3.5-year-old, I'm sure everyone's starting to look around you like, another baby?
Yeah, yeah, especially during the holidays because you always get together with your family. Like, that's the first question. Oh, yeah. So when's the next baby?
Yeah,
and, it's always like, well, not anytime soon.
Yeah, the holidays are always the best for like awkward conversations with family about like personal information or politics or religion, like stuff you probably shouldn't get into with a group of people that you see differently with, but like. Yeah, like get a few drinks and an uncle, and he's like, yeah, so what's it like in the bedroom? You're like, all right, so you really want to get into this now? That's what's next. We were just talking about grandma. Now we're talking about my personal life. Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's always that family member that just wants to literally know everything and has no boundaries and kind of wants to make everything controversial. And you're just like sitting there just super awkward, and I know that
you got a little boy that's starting to like absorb everything, so I can only imagine like someone says the wrong thing and now he's either repeating it or like that's just a bad influence waiting to happen.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy because that actually reminds me of a story that recently just happened to us. We went to a water park on during Thanksgiving, and we were walking around the water park, and there happened to be this this Indian guy. He was a pretty dark guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he walks like closer to him, and he points to him and he says, "Hey, look, it's E.T."
Oh no.
And instantly I was like, oh my God, I really hope this guy did not hear that. Like, he doesn't know any better, and obviously he has no idea, and it's just hard for me to explain. Like, no, E.T. That's not E.T.
Man, kids do say the darndest things, don't they? Wow.
Yeah, no, really. Luckily, the guy didn't hear, and I kind of we got saved by that. But yeah, they say they have no filter. Kids have no filter at all, and they will say what's on their mind, and I'm sure it's only going to get worse until he really understands, until we really embed in his brain, listen, there's certain things that you can't really say, even though you might be thinking them. You just can't say them out loud.
Yeah,
that's one of them.
Yeah, plenty of lessons to learn. The show Master of None, I don't know if you've watched that, but it's Aziz's new show on Netflix, and there's actually an episode where he's watching his buddy's kids, and they walk into, I think, a candy store or an ice cream store, and one of the kids just pointing out, Indian, black person. He's like, no, you can't do that. You can't say people's ethnicities out loud in public. So that's perfect. It's like, that's an actual thing that happens. That wasn't an outlandish plot line.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I've actually heard of that show now that you were mentioning it, and I really need to check it out because
Yeah.
I love pretty much anything Aziz does. So
Yeah, it's worth checking out for sure, and especially you'll be able to connect with that episode especially.
okay, I'm sure I'll have a lot of episodes myself like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, good. So no, so let's go all the way back. And when you when we met, you were in the Killer Apathy. Unless we met before that, you may need to correct me. I'm pretty sure that's when we crossed paths.
no, yeah, that's definitely when we first met.
Okay.
Yeah, we were the Killer Apathy. Which is when I started. I didn't like start the band or anything or help
Yeah.
start it. I kind of came in like a year or so, probably a couple years after they had already been playing locally for a while,
Mm-hmm.
just through mutual friends. And yeah, we played a bunch locally, like a ton.
In
Always
Rockford.
playing shows. Yeah, Rockford and branch out Wisconsin. Well,
Yeah.
we'd hit the burbs every now and then, but yeah, we played a ton locally, and then slowly but surely, member changes and music, direction changed.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of just dropped the name and just kind of reinvented like the whole idea of the band and the musical direction, and
Yeah.
then that's how the Color Morale started.
Is your start in music, is it Killer Apathy, or was there like previous? Because I'm always interested in, for every person who's been in a band that people have heard of, there's at least that person's had to have been in 2 to 3 bands, and at least one of those bands has been a shitty high school like punk or ska band or something. So what, like,
Oh yeah.
where does it all? Where do you get your foray into music? What's the start of all
Oh
that?
yeah. um my first band was a new metal band.
Hmm.
So,
Sure.
yeah,
In the vein
called
of
Forsaken.
Okay, and
Yeah,
what bands did
yeah.
you bite from, or what bands did you sound like?
Well, we did a lot of covers and we did a lot of originals. So we
Okay,
were doing at that point, I think we were covering like Godsmack.
sure.
Man, what else? I can't even remember, to be honest.
Godsmack's enough.
I
That's
I
a good
know
lead.
for sure. That was definitely one of the songs. I don't know, we did a lot of like we actually wrote a lot of stuff, and then just it just fizzled out. Just
Sure.
the whole band just kind of fell apart, and uh, then I got really into like pop punk with a couple of my best friends, and
Yeah.
even though like I wasn't like super into it, my friends were like super into pop punk, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like a new metal kid, and they were kind of unsure whether they wanted me to even play in the band. But then like we just started jamming, and it just went on from there. And then
And what was
I
the name
think
of that
that's
band?
when like that was Dumb Luck.
Dumb Luck. That's a good pop punk band name. I was gonna say if I saw Dumb Luck on a flyer, I would think pop punk band or ska band.
Oh yeah. It was a really good pop punk name for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like once like I made that transition to pop punk, that kind of like opened me up to a lot more. So that was kind of like the beginning of like me moving into like different musical direction,
Yeah.
and kind of allowing me to like kind of grow as like a guitarist and whatnot. And then I was like able to branch out into different musical styles, and through mutual friends, and I ended up meeting Garrett and Steve and whatnot, and that's just kind of how I then joined the Killer Apathy.
So the Killer Apathy were already running for like a year, you said, until you joined?
Yeah, yeah, a little more than that, yeah. And they were gaining a lot of steam, like locally anyway.
Yeah.
So I was like, I figured they wouldn't even like let me even try out or whatnot, just because I don't know. I'm from Rochelle, some tiny town, like 30 or 40 minutes from Rockford, and I they didn't know me. I was just kind of
Yeah.
like, it was just like one of those things where if you probably weren't their friend, they weren't gonna, even
Yeah.
acknowledge, not because they already had their circle of friends. So I figured that they'd find one in their circle of friends. So I mean, I always think about like, things like what would have happened if I would have never even, contacted them about, playing with them or whatnot, and
Right.
what would come like my musical career
Yeah.
if I wouldn't have took that step. It's crazy how little things like can just completely change everything. Like one little decision that you make. I think about that from time to time because it's just crazy where life takes you.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that about anything. How you could have not gone to this one class of one day and met somebody. Yeah. I mean, that's anything.
Yeah,
But it is funny how quickly that could have all changed, or just one little event, one little minute that could have passed by, and then your whole music history, your whole life would have been a completely different one.
yeah, definitely. And I say that mostly about music just because that's probably one of the bigger thing, one of the bigger things at this point that
Yeah.
is in like my life and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy to think about that.
So, so when you jumped into the Killer Apathy, they were already a pretty well-known band in Rockford in that area, or was it still pretty new?
No, yeah, I would say so. They had a pretty big fan base. Like I was even surprised because I hadn't been to a lot of their shows to be honest.
Yeah.
I just heard the name a lot. I checked out their music before. Um, and yeah, they when I remember playing shows and I was like, wow, holy crap! Like a lot of people like are into this and like
Yeah.
know of the band. Our fans have been following it. Like even when we play in Wisconsin and whatnot, like you know they had a fan base growing. So it wasn't like going from the Killer Apathy to the Color Morale. I thought it was going to be I thought we were almost going to be starting from like from scratch, but
Yeah.
everything ended up carrying over, which was really nice. Like that helped with the momentum.
Yeah, I've talked to the first podcast I did with this guy Mike Kaminsky, who's a band manager, and actually I talked about it in a couple different episodes, and I think there's just something I'm always like focused on, always interested in, like metal band audiences. Like when I played in high school bands and even in later bands, like if we were ever on a bill with a metal band, whether or not they were good or bad, typically they had a big following. And like I feel like heavy bands, and I mean this could be said about many different genres, I guess, but I always felt like metal bands audiences, like they even locally had huge crowds come to their shows. We would play. There was a band in our high school that was like everyone thought they were going to be like. I mean, because locally they were huge. They were called Beneath This Ashen Sky, and one of my best friends was in the band, and like we would play shows. I was in a band called Musket Arm, and we would play shows with them, and we thought we were hot shit, and then they'd play, and like people would lose their minds, and we were just like, what is this about? Like, what is the difference? Like, we're both some kind of rock band, but I think just metal like brings something out of people where like lots of people want to come and they want to just get that aggression out and they want to go nuts.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it has to do a lot with like uh, kind of the timing because a
Yeah,
lot of the kids that are coming to shows are teenagers that are full of that aggression and
sure.
like rebellion. So they're kind of looking for like the heaviest thing or like
Yeah,
you know they just want to take out that aggression in the heaviest way possible, I guess.
right.
So yeah, they kind of gravitate towards that because I know um, there'd be shows that we would play, and we'd be playing with real heavy bands, like super heavy, and
Yeah,
they'd always their crowds would go nuts. Like so. I get that feeling, like even with us, like even us being like a heavy band, we went through those times where it's like, so what are we doing different? But it's
right.
not really that. It's just kids gravitate to like heavier things and
Yeah,
they it changes over the years and with fads anyway as well,
right.
so
So what?
yeah.
How would you describe the Killer Apathy? Like if someone were like go, if they were just, if you were in the Killer Apathy still, because that was a big thing when you're in a band. Someone's like, "What do you sound like?" Who would you compare yourselves to? Did you guys have like a list of like, "Oh, we sound like if this band and this band made this band"? Like, how did you guys promote yourselves?
Oh man,
Do you even remember?
yeah, no, I remember. I don't know. It was really weird, especially like the later years, like once like the members started dropping.
Yeah.
It I don't know. It was definitely like reminiscent of like the first like screamo bands, I guess you would say that were coming out at the time.
Yeah.
But definitely because I didn't write a whole lot in that band, to be honest. Rod, the original guitarist in that band, he kind of took over most of it, and his writing style was like real like quirky and like just kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So it was like even for me, it was really weird like playing some of the stuff he wrote. Um, uh, and I could never like pinpoint like oh, this sounds like this. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just it was like reminiscent of the old like some of the first screamo bands that were coming out
Yeah.
with like a lot of intricate guitar work. Um, I don't know. I can't really pinpoint it to a man, to be honest. Yeah, but yeah. I mean, it had its run and it did well. Like as far as like bringing in fan like a kind of like a foundation for what
Yeah.
came in later years anyway. So yeah, I mean there was a lot of learning curves, with it, which it's great that it happened, with that band, and so we could build that strong foundation for the next thing to come anyway.
Well, and that's interesting too, because like a lot of times, earlier bands will be completely different. Like that's just like you say, you go through a genre or like a style, and then the next band you just completely blow that up, and then it's new people and it's a whole new thing. But the Killer Apathy was almost like it was your, like you said, like your learning curve. You could figure out what you liked about what you did, what you didn't, and like how to do well in that genre. And then by the time you started over in the Color Morale, like you kind of already knew what to expect, or like, I mean, it may not have been like you didn't have an exact science to it, like, oh, we know exactly how many people are going to come, but you had a much better like head start than some bands would have.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. I think once the name changed and obviously there was new members that formed the Color Morale, I feel like we kind of like had like a game plan set, like all right, well, this is what needs to happen if we're gonna take this to like that next level. Like
Yeah,
we know the things we did wrong, we know the things we need to improve on, we know the things that are gonna help us propel us into that, the making this more than just playing on the weekend and
right.
coming home and eating Denny's and something more than that,
Yeah.
like actually making it like a full-time thing. So we kind of knew what to do at that point, and that really helped us a lot because we didn't waste a whole lot of time. Like we went at it pretty strong as soon as like we changed everything. So
So, do you remember the point or like the moment when it's towards the end of the Killer Apathy and you're all kind of looking around each other like, we got to do something new or we got to make this change? Like, was there a moment or did it all just kind of gradually happen?
yeah, it probably happened once the guitarist Rod left,
Yeah.
the original. He when he left, I started writing pretty much everything, and it just didn't sound at all like
Yeah.
like it would have been like I don't know, it would have been just completely weird to just stick with the same name because the sound was just so different, and um, it was just kind of like a mutual decision. Like, all right, well, this is just completely different. The only two original members were Steve and Garrett,
Yeah.
and so we knew at that point that we had to start new and just go at it strong, and hope that it ended up catching on, and hope that our fan base would be cool with like all the
Yeah.
changes and whatnot, and ended up working out.
Yeah, that's a scary moment because I remember towards the end of Dr. Manhattan, there was plenty of conversations like, we want to do things different musically. And should we keep it the same name because there's certain connotations with the band name or certain style that people look towards or whatever. And we had the same thought of like, do we just blow up the name so that people have less expectation? But then also we have to kind of start over because not as many people, we'll have to basically get everybody back for a fan base if they're not finding out about the name change and stuff. So it is risky, but it's definitely got to be worth the payoff because, yeah, like you said, you're not, there's no expectations. Like you can say for people who like that band, you will like this band, but it's not just, you're not trying to like trick people or try to like just force them into a new move. Like, all right, all these people, this is what it is. Like, this is what your band is now. It's a whole new thing, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it was definitely something we'd never experienced before because I mean Garrett and Steve, that's all they knew. Like that was literally their well, Steve was in a few other bands which I don't remember the names of them, but Garrett, that was his first band, so it was like I'm sure it was probably hard for him to go through that transition, but even for the rest of us because I didn't know what was going to happen, we had already built up that reputation and we just kind of dove into it and we knew we had to do it and ended up working really well, I feel.
Well, and it's fun. I'm actually going to talk to Garrett in the next few weeks, I think. And it's funny because when I think back to your guys' band, I remember having a conversation. I remember talking to Steve a couple times. I remember talking to Garrett, or at least specific moments with them when we played with you guys at the Rock Box in Rockford. And I remember talking to Garrett, and Garrett's close to the same age as me. I think he's a little older, but we were just like by the merch table talking, and I remember him just kind of being like, yeah, if this doesn't work, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I don't have any plan. And he said he knew the score. He wasn't like oblivious to it. He's like, I'm older than the guys in the band, so I'm like, I feel like I'm taking a bigger risk doing this than some of them. And he's like, yeah, I mean, I'm like the way he kind of just came off to me was like, yeah, like I'm doing this, and if it doesn't work out, well then shit, bummer. And I think that kind of goes to show like why there was such success with the Color Morale, because I think any band that kind of tries to do it safe, like you can do well that way, but I think it's going to take a lot longer, and it's a much it's a much longer road for sure. And I think the bands that work out are the ones that are like, fuck it, like I just gotta like throw it all on the line and go for it. And sometimes it doesn't work, but typically in my experience, the bands that do work are the ones that really risked a lot to become a bigger thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Garrett was definitely all in, and I had a lot of conversations exactly the same with him in that sense, where he was just like he knew that if this didn't work out, he wasn't sure really what he was going to do, but he knew that he needed this to work out, and we're all on board, obviously. Like, granted, we're not the same age as him, but we all kind of had that feeling like, we need to make this work because, we all love doing this, and we love like playing together. So we knew that no matter what, we'd give it our best shot and work as hard as we could. And that's pretty much what we did. And now, I mean, was that show that we played, was that with Poison the Well?
That very well could have been that show.
Yeah. That was a fun show. I think I borrowed your guys' guitar strap, or you guys borrowed mine.
That sounds
something
right.
like that. I don't remember.
and if it was that show, I remember it was pretty poorly attended for what we thought it was going to be. We're like, we're opening for Poison the Well. This is going to be bonkers, and it wasn't that well attended. And everyone was like, "Oh, well, Inspector Owl's playing a show in Rockford." I'm like, "That's the show that's beating us!" Like. I love Inspector Owl. I love Corey and those guys, but I was like, I thought you were going to say like Cheap Trick's in town. Like, why aren't there a bunch of people here right now?
No, yeah, I remember thinking the same thing because I couldn't wait for that show because I think I'd only seen them like once before that.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh man, the show's gonna rule. And like, I don't remember how many kids were there, but I remember being very disappointed on the turnout.
And I think that they had just done some member changes, so it was like and they're a pretty big band, and that stage wasn't very big. So I remember them just like taking up the whole stage, like not being able to move that much.
Yeah.
But it was pretty sweet being like, all right, Poison the Well. Like, this is like watching them play like in a backyard at a party or something. Like, not many
Yeah.
people are here. Like, this is my own little show I get to experience.
Yeah, yeah. No, in that sense, it was cool because it was almost like you were just watching them practice or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I do remember that show. It's funny. I didn't even think about that being that show, but I'm sure that was the show I talked to Garrett at. And I remember talking to Steve a couple times about his parents coming down pretty hard on him and being like, you got to go to school, like, this and maybe not word, this isn't word for word, but basically saying like, the band thing is, you can't do that, you need to have a backup plan, what lots of parents say. And him being like, I got like one more year of this, and if it's not going, then I got to go to school. And I think it was within that year that the Color Morale like kicked off, and so it was just so funny to me. I was like, so that's not how that always ends.
yeah.
Like
No,
it's
and actually, he ended up going to school. He was at
oh, did he? I didn't know that.
UIC the last year. I don't remember how long he went, but him and John Bross. John was at Columbia and he was at UIC, and they would ride
Oh,
trains every weekend back home to practice and like play
wow.
shows or whatnot. And yeah, that was pretty rough. Like,
Yeah,
so we'd be writing like throughout the week, like just on our own, and then we'd come together on the weekends. And so yeah, they were doing that, and then they ended up just both of them just kind of dropping out of school like once everything started taking off.
wow. See,
So
I
they
didn't
they
even know that.
definitely yeah they definitely worked really hard during that time because that had to have been stressful. Like
Yeah,
you're at school in downtown Chicago, and on the weekends when really that's when all college kids have their fun,
yeah,
they come back to Rockford and do their thing with us and then have to go back
yeah,
like that. I'm sure that was pretty stressful on them, like at that point, especially with I'm sure with their parents on their back
yeah.
with like getting good grades and whatnot. So
That's
so
what you
yeah,
do.
that
That's what you got to do.
yeah,
you,
no,
you
yeah,
throw it all on the line
I
for it.
respect him for that because I don't know if I could have done it.
So that's kind of the beginning of the Color Morale. They're still in school, and then eventually, like, do you remember the point of like, yeah, this is doing well enough, and they know they're gonna drop out? Is it you guys getting signed? Like, do you remember? Is there a conversation or a moment like, oh, all right, let's do this now. Like, we're gonna all do this now.
Yeah, I don't remember like an exact like. I mean, the only thing I remember personally when I was like, all right, this thing's really taking off is we this is at the time of MySpace.
Sure.
When it was like transitioning MySpace to Facebook, but it was still a little bit more MySpace, I think, for
Mm-hmm.
bands anyway, in music. Um, we got a message from Ben Jorgensen from Armor for Sleep, the lead vocalist.
Yeah.
Um, and he was just like, I really dig you guys' music. I'd like to, talk to you guys some more, and see what you guys are up to and like what whatnot. And he kind of just dropped us his number and just wanted to talk and whatnot. And I remember first seeing that message, and I was like, "Oh, some fake profile with Ben
That
Jorgensen."
was gonna be my next
Just
question.
yeah, just messaged us. I was like, "Don't worry, guys, we can delete it. It's cool, like whatnot." But then like we started digging deeper into it, and we're like, "No, this is really Ben Jorgensen." him, and he just really just wanted to help us out and get us like get our foot in the door
That's
as far
awesome.
as like talking to labels and management and whatnot. And that's when I think at that point, for me anyway, was when I was like, this is, I think this might happen. Like, I think this is going to be pretty serious now.
Yeah.
And I think from that point on, everything started moving really fast. And it did because after that, we got like we started getting label offers and yeah, so everything did start moving like fairly fast. And I don't know at what point John and Steve left school, but it had to have been pretty close to that timeline.
Yeah. Do you remember what other labels or like kind of talks you had? Because I was on a podcast recently. I was on the Casey Bates podcast, and we talked about like the whole us getting signed and talking to labels thing. And I remember we talked to. I mean, we toured with. From the headline from Milwaukee, and I remember them telling us their drive-through records story. So like, not to say that every label, story is like an interesting one, but were there any little tidbits from that time, like you meeting other labels or going out for drinks or anything?
Not really. At that point, Ben was actually like our manager, like
Oh,
quote
okay.
unquote. So he was like dealing with because he was just like, listen, it, I don't want you guys' money. I just want to help you guys out because I really like believe
That's
in what you guys are
awesome.
doing. Yeah. So first of all, that was like kind of mind blowing. Like, usually like
Yeah.
any artist at that point would be like, well, I need this, this much commission, like then we'll see what I can do and whatnot. But no, he was totally cool. He just really just wanted to help us out.
Yeah.
Uh, and he did a lot of talking with the labels, but I don't think anyone, to my recollection, I don't remember uh, getting like any like super firm offers from any other
Oh,
label
okay.
besides Rise Records.
Okay.
There was talks, but honestly don't think we got like a super firm offer from anyone else. So it's
Okay.
kind of like Rise kind of came to us with like this offer, and it's everything looked really good, and so we're like, hey, let's do it. This is what we've been waiting for, is something like this. So
Yeah.
we kind of just jumped in.
So, did getting signed to Rise, was that had you already tracked the first album, or was it get signed and now go record? Like, were you sending demos? How did that all go?
Yeah, we had recorded with Joey Sturgis prior to getting signed on our own.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we come. He wasn't as big of a name as he is now.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was pretty fairly easy to get a hold of him. Like, we're a local band. Like, he didn't know who we were, and we had just, we know he'd done like a few bands that were taking off, and he was really close to us, and his prices were actually really affordable at that time for us. So
Yeah.
we're kind of like, well, let's do it. And so we recorded 6 songs with him, and we put up one song, and that's the song that Ben Jorgensen heard.
Okay.
And we pretty much shopped those 6 songs. We didn't put it out, um, in hopes that, a label would end up picking us up, and then we'd, finish the album
Yeah.
and then put out the record, which ended up happening. But yeah, so we shopped the songs that we had written and recorded so far, and that's what Rise heard, and they they loved it instantly. So
Do you remember the song you had up on MySpace?
yeah, well, it was Humanican. It's
Okay.
still like the song that like that's I still feel is probably one of the more popular ones. I don't know if kids uh, still love the song as much as they did before because it's so old now at this
Yeah.
point. But I remember, when like my last year in the band, it was still really popular, and
Okay.
to this day, I still talk to Ben every now and then, and he still tells me how much he loves that song. So it's really weird to hear that.
Funny, like, someone who comes along the way helps you, like, you hold, like you said, you're going to always remember that, hold on to that, but even that person will never forget, like, that's still the one, that song, that's what got me,
Yeah,
like, it's like, it's cool for
yeah,
you to know, like, I'll know what my favorite song is, but that someone you look up to, like, it wasn't just a fad for them. They weren't like, yeah, I liked it then and whatever. Like, they're like, no, I still love that song. I still can remember, like, my experience with that song. That's always,
yeah,
that always feels good.
yeah. No, yeah, and just like you said, like especially someone you respect so much as a musician, like
Right.
I the in my wildest dreams that would have never happened. Like the lead singer of Armor for Sleep, messaging us on MySpace and hitting us up about helping us out. Like I never would have expected that to happen, but you know
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason, and ever since then, it's obviously worked out to
Yeah.
benefit us. So awesome.
So you signed to Rise, and I remember watching the video that you guys put out, like the announcement was us signing to the record label, and I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Like I remember seeing it, and that, I mean, those were, I mean, they still are a big thing, but especially at that time, like put out a video, we just got signed, and it's like such a cool thing to do. Us talking about us signing to a label.
Yeah, it was
um,
surreal.
yeah. And do you remember were you at your one of your houses? Did you go out to eat to sign? Like, do you remember like that moment?
Yeah, I think we recorded the video, the announcement at John Bross's house.
Okay.
We were just like all sitting at his dinner table signing like the contract, literally.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just surreal. Like I couldn't, like it's just, it never hits you. It honestly, I don't think it ever does. Like
Yeah.
because it's so weird. Like because it's something you've obviously worked for your whole life, like, and I'm sure you can relate. Like it's so weird, like finally getting to that, because you feel like you might never get there,
Yeah.
and when it
Yep.
does get there, it's just like, is this really happening? Like
Yeah.
it's unreal, the feeling, but it's like the biggest like sense of accomplishment that I've felt like in that aspect, like musically.
Well, and I think a cool part of that too is you can go like I think it's hard, and now that I have a kid, like it's a hard thing to digest and be like, if she were to be want to pursue music and then say I'm not going to go to school, like I'm going to go do this thing, like even me having done it, I would hesitate to be like, yeah, go ahead, like throw it all to the wind. Like it's almost harder for me because
Yeah,
I know the path, so I'm just like, school's good, school's good too.
yeah. No, yeah, and I've had conversations with my wife about this as well. Like you know, if my son ends up picking up music and like
Yeah,
taking it seriously, and I feel like she's more the like lenient one, where she's like, yeah, like if he's into it, just let him go, full on with it. And I'm
yeah,
just like, I don't know, man. Like you go through a lot of
yeah,
shit, dude. You go
yeah.
through a lot of shit. So I don't know. I'm not at that point yet because I don't know what he's going to be into. With
Sure.
my luck, he's not even going to want to touch a guitar.
Yeah,
At this point, he's playing his like the small guitars that I bought him. But
yeah,
you never know. Like usually, sometimes kids just want to gravitate to the complete opposite thing that their parents are into.
yeah,
So I'm not going to force anything. I'm going to have instruments there. If he wants to,
yeah.
grab one and jam, great. If he doesn't, oh well,
Yeah, I think that's
like
the way you got to go. It's there for you to use, and if you're not into it, I'm not going to live vicariously through you and be like, you must carry on my legacy.
yeah, yeah, definitely not. Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna let him do his own thing, but we'll see. And I'll if he ends up wanting to go at it real hard, I guess we'll see when the time comes. I don't know what I'm gonna think at that point, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I feel your pain, man.
So you guys sign. That's a big exciting moment. You can go tell your parents and be like, "Hey, I think that's another side of it too. Is like you're excited to tell, and not every parent says no, you can't do it, but I think every one of them is a little scared for you, and you can be like, "Look, we got signed," and even though they may not know what that means, and there's still some proving to be made, but like just being able to tell your parents we got signed, that's like a marker to be like, okay, like, we're a legit band. Someone's gonna back us and support us. So, you know, things are looking up for now. Things are good for now. We'll check in later on that, but things are good for now.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and I feel like it was really hard. Well, it wasn't like super hard on me, but like as far as like family goes,
yeah,
because they weren't like I wasn't always like super supported like with it because, and my family was like it was always like, okay, well, you go to school and
right.
you get a study your career and then you go on and do that and
Mm-hmm.
that's what you do. And and I just didn't do that at all. And
Yeah,
they were always there was always doubt in their mind, like, where's this really going to take you? Is this really going to be worth it in the end? Like, you know, and when I remember, finally signing and then like, telling my family about it, just like you said, they don't get it
right.
because obviously they're not in the music, you know, industry, and they don't really know the ins and outs, so they don't understand it. And even if you try to explain it, they're still kind of like, well, all right, well, let me see it to believe it. And
Yeah,
I think that was still like one of the hardest things. Like, we're not going to be the Beatles. Like, that's
yeah,
not what's going to happen. That's not. We're not going to take over the world or anything like that. But this is a huge accomplishment, and
yeah,
it was kind of hard for me to not to see them not be able to like see what I saw.
yeah,
And so it was kind of hard in that aspect. But I think now at this point they kind of like, now that they've seen like all the places I've gone to, like the
yeah.
success I had, like even though it wasn't like, we weren't Metallica or something, like they
You weren't?
understand that.
I thought I was
Yeah.
talking to Lars Ulrich right now. I need to hang this up.
I think they still understand, like, I worked pretty hard doing it, and I had, some pretty decent success with it. So that's enough for me.
So getting signed is a big deal, but I think another big deal is your first big tour that you get, like for a band that either you like or a band that is already established. Like, so is it you get signed and then you get a big tour, or what happens after you sign?
Yeah. Well, after we signed,
Because it's such a big thing, unfortunately. Like, I mean, there's tons of good bands and they tour, and every now and then unsigned bands or bands that don't have that backing, there's one that still can go do support slots, but lots of managers, agents, and labels look for, are they signed? What label are they signed to? It's like, that's a name.
yeah,
Okay, now we can take them. They can come on this tour.
yeah, yeah. We did our first tour before our album came out.
Oh, okay.
Um, and that was the only tour we'd done. So we were already signed at this point, but our album hadn't came out yet, and it was going to lead up to a bigger tour. It was just, I wouldn't even, I don't know, I don't really like calling it our first tour because it was like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. It was from first to last headlining, and they were just kind of like on the downward end of their career, which I think
Okay.
they actually got back together. But and it was only a couple weeks. Our van ended up breaking down during like the last few dates of it.
Oh,
So it
wow.
was like, it's really hard for us to call that our first tour because there were so many like mishaps during it. But that ended up leading up to our first big tour, which was with Attack Attack, which was like huge at that moment because they
Yeah.
were like, that was like at their peak. They were like selling out like these huge like 1,000 cap venues like
Yeah.
every night. And for us, that was like, it was it was weird, man, because usually bands do their like first tours like doing like 300 cap venues or
Yeah.
whatnot.
If
Like,
you're
I don't know.
lucky.
Yeah, and it was just so bizarre, like doing your first like tour in that like setting because everything's like so um like timed out, like as far as like we didn't know anything, like we
Right.
literally jumped into it, like it was our first tour. The tour manager we had with us, it was his first tour. Like
Yeah.
he was really learning everything on the go. Like we had no idea what we were doing,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like it helped us like it helped us with our fan base because our fan base grew really like fast doing that tour,
Yeah.
and it kind of helped us like with that steady growth like throughout like the rest of the next like couple of years. So it was awesome. It was a really good experience. Obviously, we made mistakes and and stuff like any rookie touring
Sure.
band would do, but it was awesome. Like, and all the dudes in Attack Attack were super awesome to us. So I mean, I couldn't ask for a better first tour.
And were you guys opening that tour, or were you main
Yeah,
support to them, or?
no, we were the opener because it was a pretty stacked lineup. Like as far as that scene went, because I think it was us, the band after us was Our Last Night, and then a band called I Set My Friends on Fire.
Oh, I remember them.
Yeah, and then Attack Attack. Or
Okay.
actually, there's another band, Miss May. Sorry, they're in the middle of the lineup. So
Okay.
like, it was just like a huge like for that scene.
Yeah.
Like it was huge that tour, and yeah, it was nuts.
So is the next tour, because the Wikipedia page says you guys tour with the Blood. So is that next, or is that when
No,
is?
actually, the tour after that was with the Chariot, which was awesome.
Oh man, that's a
That was
pretty
probably
awesome second tour.
yeah, I think that was my favorite tour.
Yeah.
Honestly, like it wasn't like thousand cap venues or anything like that, but it was awesome. Being able to see that band play night after night
Yeah.
is ridiculous. Like how they do that every night.
Yeah.
It's like it's unreal.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's a band that looks like, because we did tours with bands that we looked up to and liked and had an energy that we either were aiming towards or trying to make ourselves. So that's a kind of band that I feel like when you tour with them, you watch them the first couple nights, and then like the next week you're like up in your energy. Like it's just amping you to try to push you guys to go crazy and like put on a good live show too.
Oh yeah, it's an eye opener. I remember like just the first week on that tour, I was like, we need to step up our game, man. Like they're just wrecking it, like just
Yeah.
killing everything, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like yeah, that's. I mean, obviously, like even before we toured with them, I was a fan. Like
Yeah.
I've been a fan. Like everything that band's done has been great. And I don't know, their energy's like undescribable.
And I remember around that time you guys played with them on stage, right? Like if you came out on stage and like played alongside them
Oh
for a song.
yeah, yeah. It happened like halfway through the tour where we'd like after shows we'd be like just talking and bullshitting
Yeah.
and we're like, hey, how? What if we just like come on stage and like play like the end of I forget the song it was, and they're like, yeah, well, let's do it, and we were like kind of just joking about it, and they were like dead serious.
Yeah.
So we're like, awesome, all right. And like every time after that, even if we weren't on tour with them, whenever we'd like do a festival or something, we would do it
That's
and like
awesome.
just not prepared at all, just do it. Like we probably messed up like a million times, and
Yeah.
but we didn't care. We were playing like with one of our like our favorite bands like on
Right.
stage. Like nothing mattered at that point. It was awesome. It was a really cool experience, and those dudes are awesome. Like they had a lot of member changes over the years, but I remember that lineup that we're on tour with in particular. They were all awesome dudes.
Yeah. That's one of those things where, because similarly, like when we toured with Saves the Day, I remember at some point, well, they were playing acoustic, and so they didn't have a drummer. And at some point, I was like, "Oh, I should come play drums for you guys, like for a song." They're like, "Yeah, you should." And I was like, "Wait, what? I should?" And I never did, and I regret it. I should have just sat and
Oh,
learned a song and done it with them, or I was just like, "Oh, we'll have some more time on this tour. Like I'll get to it," and then just it like even forgot that I mentioned it. But that's one of those moments where you're just like, oh, like it's that easy. Like you're a band that I look up to. Why would that be that easy for that to happen? Like you just mentioning we should play with you guys on stage, and they're like, yeah, you should. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we forget to remember that like we're all the same, like regardless of their status, like
Yeah.
as musicians, like we literally all started the same. Like they're just dudes, like we're just dudes, and I forget that. I'm like the worst at that because I'm like, oh man, they're not gonna want us to
Right.
play their instruments on one of their songs. Like, come on, but they're just dudes. Like they just want to have a good time. Like like they don't really care. They don't take themselves that seriously to
Yeah.
where they're gonna say no or something.
Well,
Like
those are
I
the
don't know.
best. Those are the best bands, and they're
Yeah.
not all bands are like that. Like we toured with bands where we try to pal around with them, and it did not go well. Like I remember
Oh yeah.
when we opened for Newfound Glory and the Receiving End of Sirens, and I think it might have been the first night we were at the merch table, and you know a big thing with us was always just like trying to make each other laugh. And similarly, like you feel like, oh, guys in bands all have a pretty good sense of humor. They're all pretty easygoing. Like we can bust balls probably, but there are also times where we get too comfortable and be like, oh, this is the first night we're hanging out. Like let's all become best friends immediately. And some people aren't ready to have that happen off the go.
Yeah.
So like I'm at the merch table and one of the guys from the Receiving End of Sirens, the guitarist, is next to me as he's trying to sell merch, and we're like barking random shit out to get people to come to the merch table. And at some point I say like oh, come see, oh, don't go buy from them, like they're the receiving end of shit, like come buy our merch. And I'm thinking, oh, that's gonna get a good laugh. And the guitarist looks at me and he's like, dude, really, like that's what you're saying about our band? And I was like, oh, well, this should go well for the next 8 days.
Yeah.
And it was a little awkward, and I don't even remember if I even talked to him about it or if that was just that. But, not all bands, I think, especially if you have a good experience with a band like The Chariot, then, and if it's early in your band career, you can be like, get almost like an immature view of like, oh, all bands are like this. All bands are cool. They get it. And we can all be best buds. And that's not always the case.
Yeah. No, yeah, I completely agree because I feel like after like a few tours, I would kind of, before I like started like bullshitting with bands, I would just kind of like try to read them out just to see what they're like first. So I know my boundaries because yeah, exactly that. Like you never know what's going to offend somebody because I mean, you would think being in like, the music scene that like we've grown up in, like most band dudes would be like laid back and just easygoing, and whatnot. But no, it's not the case. Like there's a lot of like uptight dudes that just don't really care for anything besides business. And so I definitely understand that. And I didn't go through anything. I don't think that awkward, thank God. But I could definitely see that being a case if I would have like not kind of been on my toes about who I can push it with and who I can't.
Well, and I remember there's shows we played where flat out we had people in the crowd like wanting to fight us, like they hated our band and they wanted to end our band right there and then. Did you guys ever have that experience? Like just someone in the crowd, like not just being complacent and like, this isn't my thing, or I have like a pissy face on, like this pisses me off and I'm going to let you know right now about it.
Yeah, I don't think we ever went through anything like that. Just no. And that's crazy that you guys did. It's so weird.
That same tour we were in Detroit and we played I think it's the Fillmore Theater. It's this big, beautiful, like, looks like an old opera house. And we were just like, oh my God, this is the most incredible place we've ever played. It sounds amazing. Yeah. And we're on stage. And granted, we may not be everybody's cup of tea, especially the Newfound Glory crowd. But some guy was just looking at Andrew and being like, I'm going to fucking kill you. And Andrew, his response was like to try to taunt him and piss him off more. So he was like... He had, his giant drumsticks that he was like waving at the guy and just like smiling. I mean, he wasn't saying let's fight. He was just being like, I'm happy. Like, this doesn't bug me. And that pissed him off more. And I just remember being like, oh, man, I wonder how many other bands go through hecklers who just like want to assassinate them on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never gone through that. I can't say.
It all depends on the package you're on, too. Because, I mean, if you're on tour packages with like-minded bands, you're probably not going to have someone who's like, what is this band about? Like, if you're in a similarly grouped tour, then odds are, unless someone comes and doesn't like every single band, it's probably not going to happen. But we were on tours where, like, we were a weird band, so people would be like, fuck you guys. And we'd be like, all right, sweet, see ya.
Yeah, that must have been hard for you guys, like, seeing as, like, you guys didn't fit, like, a specific mold of, like, a genre, I would say. Like, so, like, yeah, there would be, like, I could see there being tour lineups where you guys fit in, like, more than others because, it's just, it works out better. But, yeah, I guess now, like, seeing it, like, yeah, if you're on, like, a kind of like a bizarre lineup than what you're used to, then, yeah, it's...
But those are the stories I remember. I don't remember. There's shows I completely forgot that we did well at, but the ones I remember are the ones where someone wanted to kill us. So, like, that's just how that goes. That those are the moments you hold on to.
Yeah, I think the only moment, like, even close to that I remember was playing in Utah, which I hate. Well, I hated.
Was it Salt Lake City?
Yeah, Salt Lake City. It's just every kid that came to our shows anyway, like during the time that I played in the Color Morale, it was like these like straight edge like kids that just like hated everything, and I just remember like playing shows there where like dudes were literally just like with their arms crossed, like watching us like talking like crap and. Like you could just tell that they just hated everything about what you were doing, but they didn't like they weren't telling us that they wanted to kill us or anything.
Yeah.
But I remember like one of the shows in specific because after the show we were like hanging out in the van, and some like drunk kid like with like a chain starts like smacking our van with it.
Okay.
He's like just completely wasted, and he's just smacking our van and. I'm like, what is happening right now? And we all step out of the van, and there's this kid just smacking our van with a chain, like huge chain. And after that, I didn't know what to think about Salt Lake City because it didn't make any sense to me. Like, I feel like every time we went there, something went wrong or like just bad vibes. Like, but that's as like far as it went. Like, I think that kid ended up getting arrested or something, which was awesome. But
justice.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
vibes in the city, definitely.
That's a good point too, because at least for me personally, New York was a thing for us for a while. Because I remember we'd go to New York, even if the shows were good, like we'd have a hard time parking the van and trailer, and like this would happen, or we'd pop a tire. So it's like, yeah, you have something bad happen, then you associate like, oh, I hate Salt Lake City. I don't want to go there. But then. For work, I've gone to New York, and I'm like, I love New York. Why did I ever hate this city? Like, yeah, this is awesome, and it's just so funny how quickly you can associate, like, you hating a town just because you have a bad show or no one comes to it, or you've got people who are smacking chains into your van. I mean, I guess I'd be rubbed the wrong way on that town as well. So.
Yeah, no, and you're completely right because I remember one of the shows I took I went on like a train ride to like downtown Salt Lake before we played once, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's literally beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely associating it with like bad shows, bad vibes, but that's just what you do as a musician. You're like, oh great, this city again. Like some asshat's gonna be a dick to me again. Like,
you don't have much, and that's the thing too. I think a lot of people see like, look at this tour you're going on, you're exploring the world, and really you're like, well, I'm in the town for like an hour, and then I'm in another town for 10 minutes, and so really I'm only getting to see like one thing, if that, and that's your limited experience. So all it takes is one thing to go off, and you're like, well, that town sucks, like I don't want to go there again.
I'm glad you said that too, because no one gets that. No one gets that we're not really seeing the whole US, like,
right.
And we see it out of the window of our van when we're driving by. We see trees and
and a
some
McDonald's
landscape.
And a Taco Bell bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see a lot of gas station bathrooms and we eat a lot of crappy food because that's just the fastest thing and the cheapest thing. So it's there's a really big misconception about how touring bands live their lives, and that's definitely one of them, is being able to see the whole U.S., which Yeah, I haven't really seen a whole lot yet, to be honest.
Yeah. I always say to people, it's like you're a traveling hobo, essentially. Like you're collecting all your money together, and you're like, well, this is our dinner tonight that we can buy, and hopefully it's enough for gas, and nothing bad happens, and then we can make it to the next town. Like you're like the traveling circus or something, just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way to put it.
So you guys tour with Attack Attack. That's a big tour. You do the Chariot. That's awesome. I mean, the Blood's on here. That would be a big thing for me because one of the first heavy shows I ever went to was Poison the Well, Murder by Death, and the Blood at the Rave, and remember being blown away by that show entirely.
Yeah, that tour was a Rise Records tour because I remember they had just signed to Rise Records
Okay.
previous to that. And yeah, that was an awesome tour too. The Blood dudes are really awesome, and I was obviously a fan of them as well.
Yeah.
And it was.
At what point is it time for album two? Like, the first album's doing well. You're going on tours. Do you remember, like, are you on a tour and you guys say like we're kind of tired of playing these songs for a year, or is the label like, hey, let's do another album?
I think I don't think anyone really talked about it. I started writing immediately after We All Have Demons came out, which was the first album. So I was writing anyway. That's all I did really. Like even before we got signed, like I literally that's all I did was write music.
Yeah.
Like, and there was a lot of stuff that I wrote for We All Have Demons. I didn't make it. But yeah, I was just always writing like whatever it was. So it kind of just came naturally. Like at one point we were like, all right, well, a year's gone by, which is weird to say because I remember back in the day, like bands would like tour on an album for like 2 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like every year you have to be putting something out or else like kids will like forget about you or whatnot. So like after like a year went by, we're like, all right, well, I guess it's time to go back in. And by that time we had like, we had, songs to put on an album that we were like really like stoked on. And we went back with Joey Sturgis and did My Devil in Your Eyes, which was the second album.
Is the process aside from, I mean, there's everyone always says sophomore slump. Like, did you have that in mind, or was it just like you're just chugging along, not even focusing on that, and everything's kind of coming naturally? Or do you guys feel the pressure of like, we got to really knock it out of the park with this album?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely felt the pressure, and more so because I was writing like on the road too. So like at the very end of like writing, like once I knew we were going in the studio, I was like, holy crap, like it's coming soon. I really need to like polish everything up and make sure like, everything that I wrote is the best it could be, So yeah, there was definitely pressure like right before we went in the studio because I knew that like whatever the album was going to become, like it needed to be like an extension of like what the band was like in a more refined way, and like it needed to just kind of branch out a little bit more, like because I feel like the first album, everything was kind of new, like with that sound that we were like doing. So like obviously there was things that I wasn't like super comfortable with, like playing wise, because I was like new to the sound, because before then it was the Killer Apathy and it was just completely different, and I was just kind of still figuring things out. And I love that album to death, like even to this day, because it like everything that I was going through at the time when we wrote that album, it like brings back all those memories, and I'm super proud of everything that it became, because it was ultimately the album that got us signed. But the second album, I knew that was just going to be an extension of what we were. So I really wanted it to like strike like a certain chord with our fans that were following our music. So it wouldn't be just a repetition of the first album, and more or less be like an extension of what we were.
Well, I think a lot of people focus on, that like the first album's what you break out in the world, that's like your sound. So the second album, do you continue with that, or do you, like, at that point, do you not like that sound anymore? Do you want to branch off completely and do something different? And I think a band, like, you put a lot of pressure on yourself for the first album, because that's what everyone's going to hear for the first time. But there is this thing of, you've got all of your life to write your first album, but you don't have that for the second album. Like, you can take as long as you want because no one knows you and you are creating your sound. But the second album, as soon as people are into you or onto you, they want to hear more, and you put pressure on yourself, whether it's touring or writing, to like make that happen. So it's not the same creative process, and I think it can either hurt because you're not giving yourself the time that you need, or it can help because some people write better under pressure. So you're like, yeah, I'm churning out a bunch of stuff because I have to do it.
Yeah.
So is that what you were feeling that way for your album? Like, I gotta knock some stuff out here.
Yeah. No, yeah. At the end, because I was like kind of gradually writing after We All Have Demons, but then like, right before the studio, it kind of was like, all right, well, we need to really like wrap this thing up and, figure out exactly what songs are going in. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure in that aspect of it. And I don't know, I ended up being really proud of that album just because of a lot of the things that went into it. And we did try new things, and I feel like, even though like it's the Color Morale, like it's still like we tried a lot of new things that maybe we wouldn't have like in like the prior album. And I'm really proud of it.
So is there a point, like, are you getting how is Rise in all this? Because my experience with our label experience was different than others. So are they being super supportive? Are they just kind of leaving you alone to do what you want? Like, especially between album 1 and 2, like, what's their where are they in this process?
I think they were pretty like hands off. Like they didn't really like pressure us to do anything, or like they weren't really like nudging us in like a certain direction.
Yeah,
they kind of just wanted to see like where it went, like where we would take it, like instead of like them kind of forcing like a way to take. Because I'm sure a lot of people probably have misconceptions, like that certain labels may push their artists to go a certain way, but surprisingly, Rise, they were pretty cool with doing just whatever we wanted to do. They didn't really push us in a certain direction. They just kind of were like, hey, do your thing. We trust you guys. We know that you guys will put out a great record. Obviously we want to hear it before it gets put out, but it's we trust you guys. We obviously signed you guys for a reason. And we know it'll be great. So,
so your experience with a record label was good, was primarily good. Nothing.
Yeah. No, they were really good with us. Yeah. I mean, obviously they had, obviously just like any labels, they have bands that they put more work into just because they're bigger than, than a lot of their other bands. And obviously they're working more with certain bands than other bands. So that, that's always the case, no matter what label you're on. They're always going to give more attention to the bands that are, bringing them, the most, money and like fans and whatnot. Like that's just how it is. Like, it's a business. Like, no matter which way you spin it, it's a business, and that's the way they treat it. And but no, they were really cool with us in the years that we were with them. So yeah.
And did you notice with the second album a jump in either crowd size or popularity or feedback? Like, did you feel like, oh, like this was a success, or it's at least pushing us to get on bigger tours? Like, were you getting that feeling at all?
Yeah, it wasn't like a super huge like jump, like But I felt the gradual like success of the band through like extensive touring and the new album. Like it was gradual. It wasn't like, oh, we put out the new album and now all of a sudden we're selling out all these clubs. But I definitely could tell, like, because you go to certain cities and you'll kind of see like the crowds, and then once you see like that you guys are growing, you can see it. Like, you may not remember everyone's face that comes and sees you at every show, but you can sense that you're getting bigger, especially with people singing along more to your songs or whatnot, because sometimes album sales are deceiving. Like, you could do X amount of number of albums, and that could mean a lot of different things, especially with bands trying to cheat the system and whatnot. So it could mean a lot of different things. So you can't even base everything off of album sales. It's mostly what you see at your shows and whatnot. That's kind of how I base like our success, like as far as people coming back and seeing us, and then seeing new faces as well singing songs.
Sure. So you and I share, I mean, I wanted to have you on the podcast for several reasons, but I always try to like hone in on something interesting or something that I find interesting in the person I want to interview. And that is that you and I share the common trait of leaving a band. We both left the band and the band continued, like, without us. Not just like, oh, the band broke up and that was the end of the band. Like, stepping away from a band that is seemingly doing well or has something going that you could stay with, but you are in a tight position mentally or, with what's going on in your life. Like, that was not an easy moment for me. And I'm sure it was not an easy moment for you. Like, did you feel it? Do you remember specifically, like, it was this moment it happened? Like, was it around album 2, or do you kind of feel it creeping along? Like, yeah, like, I know that I'm going to have to step away from this.
It pretty much happened once me and my wife, at the time girlfriend, knew we were expecting our son. That's kind of when it was like, all right, well, now I really need to think about like what it is like I need to do, because I have a lot of respect for band members that have families, because I don't know how to do it, honestly. Like, I
don't
really
either,
don't. Like, I have a really, really, really big respect, and I know a lot. Like, we toured with a lot of bands that after tours would go home to their families, and like at that point, it wasn't like something I thought about a lot, but it is now, because I can't imagine that. Like, it's hard, especially like in this day and age with music and like how not high record sales are, and in the scene we're in now, like music, like it's not like we're selling out the United Center or like anything like that. So it was one of those things where I had to really think about it. Obviously, like, my wife made sure that I really thought about it, because she knew that I put like my whole life into it, like everything. Like, that's all I knew was music. Like, that's all I knew I wanted to do. And from the time I picked up my guitar at 12 years old, like, I never looked back. So it was really hard for me to come to the decision, but I knew it was the right one, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted to be in my son's life like full time. Like, and that was the biggest thing, is I really wanted to be there for everything. I didn't want to miss anything, because you never know if you're going to have another chance to do it again, Yeah, it was hard.
Was there was there a trial period of like, was she pregnant? You're like still touring, like, let's see how this feels, or was it just you knew right away? No, like, I gotta dip out of here.
Well, as soon as we found out is when I thought about it for like a couple weeks, and then that's when I kind of came to the band about it.
Yeah. You remember that? You remember that sit down, that little talk?
I remember driving because at the time we were practicing at Justin's house.
Yeah.
And I didn't even tell them that, I had really anything to say. I just kind of went there with no idea what I was going to say, but I knew that I, had to come out with it. But yeah, it was really hard. I remember that drive, like, to this day thinking about like what I was gonna say and how I was gonna say it. But yeah, I came with them, and they were obviously super supportive of it, and like they understood everything, and they knew that they were going to continue, and obviously I wanted them to, because why wouldn't they? Everything's going great. Like um, they had a great guitarist, still at the time, and they ended up getting new members, but which are great friends of ours, and still are. And yeah, it was really hard, but at the end of the day, it's a decision that like I still think is the best decision I made, because obviously being a dad is like the best thing ever, and you can relate.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't think it's a thing of like, I mean, there's going to be either way, you win and you lose. Like, you're letting go of like you said, something you worked for your whole life, so that's a bummer, but you're being in your child's life, so that's a positive. So you're winning and you're losing at the same time. So I mean, like all big life decisions, there isn't a clear cut like, oh, I will easily do this thing because it's being told to me to do so. Like, no, this is gonna suck, and it's gonna make other people's lives suck too, and that's just what's gotta happen now.
Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, I don't regret it all. And actually, yeah, so I told them, and then I told them, I obviously I'm not just gonna leave now and leave you guys kind of like stranded or whatnot. So I ended up doing the next tour that we had planned, which was the last tour I did, which was with a band called We Came as Romans. They were the headliner, and that was my last tour. And Erica was pregnant at that time, and so I just said that would be my last tour. And so I didn't really go through like the trial process of seeing if I could work, because I kind of had already made up my mind at that point. Like, I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to like do the last tour, knowing that it was my last tour, so that I could get everything out that I needed to on that tour, and like just I didn't want to go out not knowing it was my last tour, I guess.
And is there a favorite song that you lean back on, or one that you think summarizes or wraps up the band the best to you?
I don't know. The last album that I was on was No Hope.
Yeah.
And I wrote some of it, and it was just like a collaboration between me, their new guitarist Aaron Saunders, and Devin King, their other guitarist now. And I like that album a lot because not because I had any hand in it, but because I was able to like see a different perspective in their guitar playing. And I don't know, I think like that was like a good album to kind of like end my musical career with them.
Yeah.
Because that album came out even after that tour. That album ended up coming out in, man, I don't remember actually. It was recorded in the summer after that tour, but I don't remember when it came out exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm proud of it just because like, even though like I wasn't full on into it, because Silas had already been born at that time, everything was crazy.
Yeah.
But there were so many put into it where I enjoyed like being like I was able to be a fan of the band.
Yeah.
Like, also without like being in it 100%, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like and kind of like bounce off like feed off their like energy and like influences into like my writing for the album. So I feel like that album kind of shaped everything together as a band. Like I honestly like am really like happy that album happened the way it did.
What about albums post you? or any music or any of the things you've heard post you, how has that been? Like just listening completely objectively as someone who's had very little or no involvement. Is that too hard to do? You don't do it, or is it like, yeah, I'm a fan, or that's not the stuff? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely listen to it because, like I said, one of the things that I loved about well, I guess I can't say loved about leaving, but the things that I kind of look forward to when I was leaving the band is just seeing like the band grow.
Yeah.
And that's definitely what they're doing because they're growing like every day. And the stuff they're putting out, I can hear like the growth in the writing. Like I can hear it like with everything. It's their structures, everything. Like I love hearing the growth in it, and I've loved everything they've been putting out. Obviously, it sounds completely different than what I would write because that's just going to happen. You can't expect someone to write exactly what what you would write, but I love the progression and I love everything they've done since I've left. So I have nothing bad to say about it or anything. Like it's been awesome seeing them grow and seeing them continue something that I helped start, and it's been great.
Well, how do you think I'm supposed to get listeners if you're not going to cause some controversy? I was hoping you'd talk some shit. I was hoping you'd say, the albums that I was on were better than the new ones. You've done nothing for me here, so I can't even play this episode anymore.
You know what? Maybe I'll send some controversial pictures of the band.
Fair enough.
Our touring days.
Good. That'll help. I think that puts us right to today. And the only other addition I'd have is since then, musically, I know you've watched the band go on and grow and to do other things. And you and I have collaborated musically. We recorded together, and that was fun with our buddy Jared. Yeah, are there things that you want to pursue? Otherwise, it doesn't even have to be musically. Like, are there things? What are you looking forward to in the future? You've got a son to watch grow up. Like, are there things that are you at some point you're like, I want to write an album myself. I want to what other kinds of things are you looking forward to in the future?
Honestly, just kind of growing as a musician, writing, just continue writing whatever it is. Because especially now that I'm not in writing for like the Color Morale, my like music direction is always like bouncing back and forth from like different like influences that I have like sporadically.
Yeah.
So I'm always writing like all kinds of different shit, and so I just that's pretty much it. I just want to keep like growing in that sense, like not like oh, I'm just gonna like write like some indie
right
like stuff and that's it. I'm just gonna do that for the rest of my life and just put out songs here and there. Like I want to continue writing like just whatever it is that that comes to me, like
yeah,
because I feel like when you're in a band, you're kind of, I don't want to say you're like pigeonholed into writing like a certain style, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate, the fan base that you created by like completely going off the rails and doing something, completely different. So now that I have like the freedom to just write whatever it is I want, I just want to grow in that aspect, just kind of push the boundaries of like, what it is I write. Obviously I don't have a lot of time to do it, but when I do, I love to. Just kind of like the project we did, like I never wrote stuff like that before. We were in the Color Morale, and it's fun. It's fun to be able to just kind of go all out and not really expect anything and just do it. But as far as like things that I'd like to try, I know me and you talked about it not that long ago, but I really want to do like a really heavy project. Just like
I've been bugging you about that lately.
Dirty. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really into that idea. So I think we're gonna have to work on it. I know I have a lot of ideas in my head that I've been jamming out, so we'll work on it.
Good. That sounds good. Yeah, any ideas you have, I'd love to work on. It'd be a good outlet. I haven't been able to write anything in a while, so it'd be fun to work on that with you.
Oh yeah, we'll do it.
Well, good, man. It's been like an hour and a half, so I can't ask you any more of your time. Time is valuable in a home with a child, so I gotta let you get back to your duties. You got a little family to keep to.
Yeah, I can't even believe it's been an hour and a half, honestly.
Well, I'm glad I got to give you a break, have a moment just to sit and not have to watch a child and run after them and worry for an hour and a half. You just got to talk about some good old memories, and I appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, no problem, Nick. Anytime. I've listened to the podcast, not every episode, but I've listened to a few, and I love what you're doing, and I hope
thanks,
you
buddy.
keep doing it for many, many years to come, and everything's awesome. So I hope it keeps growing.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
No
Well,
problem.
good. Have a good rest of your night, man. Good catching up with you.
Yeah, you too, Nick.
All right, buddy. Take it easy.
You too. Bye.